Man, this is great news for the American people. I mean, I'm finally we had a federal judge. I'm pretty sure he's not an Obama appointee, um, who said, "You know what? Government's out of control, and I'm going to stop it." The judge not only dismissed the case and called it a mistrial, but he's dismissed it with prejudice, meaning the government cannot recharge Bundy, which is a great win. These guys stood up against the government, had a lot of people behind them. There's the number of people that stood up made a great difference. The fact that all charges were dropped doesn't mean that these guys spent a lot of time in jail for doing nothing wrong. Now, I know there's going to be others saying they didn't do nothing wrong. The judge dismissed the case because the prosecutors hid evidence. And the reason the prosecution hides evidence is because they can, and because they know it makes their case weak. They know they were wrong. That's why you hide evidence. So this is cool that this is another court win, because the ranchers' long battle of federal lines. Of course, they're trying to get federal lands to use it. They were grazing. And they're saying, some of the charges they had against these guys: assault, threats against government officials, firearm offenses, obstruction. I mean, they just threw the book at these guys, and the judge threw it all out. Now, it's funny, they're trying to get them for refusal to pay grazing fees, yet who's running around? Jesse Jackson owning, maybe it's not Jesse Jackson, it's one of the other great black leaders that owe $16 million, $160 million in back taxes, not in jail, not being charged, not being prosecuted, never arrested, allowed to run around free and not pay millions of dollars in taxes. A white rancher, you know what? Let's go arrest him. I mean, it's just a travesty. So there's lots of news articles where they're coming out finally free. There's a little bit of video footage I'm going to show for people that didn't keep up with this or that weren't familiar with it, or for, I guess, longevity purposes, if somebody watches this 3 or 4 years from now, if my channel's still up, if Google, YouTube, and the government hasn't shut me down.
Supposed to have an army that comes against we the people. When did that ever happen in America? It happened on Bundy Ranch. They stuck their guns down our throats. And that is definitely not what our founding fathers intended.
For those that don't remember, man, I remember watching this. That was one of the few times I was proud of the American people coming together and pushing back against the government. There were numbers, a lot of good people doing it the right way, not burning down other people's businesses and neighborhoods and then being called poor victims. These guys were fighting for cattle, land, and the right to work hard, and the government came down on them. Look at all the people lined up out here, man. That was the only way government backs down is when they know they're going to lose. The only reason these guys left is because of these numbers. If there had been 5 or 10 people trying to do this, wouldn't have happened.
We respect your authority as county.
This is when you have to be careful. When you get a crowd like this and everybody starts cheering, luckily these were decent people who weren't looking for a reason to start a war and to start shooting. But you've got armed people and not necessarily a mob mentality, but a group or crowd mentality that things can go wrong quick. And that's what when I was watching this live, I was like, man, I hope this doesn't go bad and give the government an excuse to open up. It would have been a bloodbath. It would have been another Waco, Ruby Ridge, something. But you know what? I think Ruby Ridge and Waco kind of woke up the country, and so did the Oklahoma bombing. That American people, when pushed far enough, will say enough's enough. Now, I want you to notice that these guys are walking backwards with their guns. This guy has his gun hanging over his shoulder. This guy don't even have his hand on his gun. So were these officers in fear, or were just some of them in fear? Did they know that, hey, you know what, we just need to pull out and get out of here and de-escalate this? I mean, that was a good move on them leaving. I'm sure they took a lot of heat and said, you know what, you set us back, you shouldn't have left. The government probably debriefed this, said, next time we do this, we can't pull away because we feed the people. We let the people think they're in charge. We let them think that they can run us off, and we don't want to set that. Well, you know what? Not only did you set a precedence in this, you also went to the court, and the government tried to hide because they know they were wrong. They tried to hide evidence, and when they got caught, the judge threw out the damn case, and now you can't charge them again. Thank God for our court when it works right. When it works bad, it's bad. But when it works right, it's a good thing. So the Attorney General kind of jumped in here and said he wanted to, he I guess found an expert to go in about it. But what's really great here is the judge found on the mistrial it was impossible for them to receive a fair trial because of willful failure to disclose information to the defense. That's called, I mean, he called it here due process, but due process and failure to disclose falls under discovery. The prosecution is obligated to discover and give a copy and all information that they're going to use against the defendant so the defense can prepare a proper defense. And, you know, the DA that I turned in was trying to hide evidence, tried to hide a report, tried to get me and my lieutenant hiding stuff in a murder trial. And, I mean, it just offended me. And prosecutors do it all the time, but a lot of times they don't let a whole lot of people know they're doing it, so nobody can really call them out on it. And even if you do know, if you're in the system, calling them out, you know, is usually going to cost you. They're going to try and come after you or fire you. So a lot of people won't do it. But I think it's great that the judge caught him and spanked him for doing it. Here's a great picture of the day of the standoff. He's got good cover. This concrete is good cover and concealment. People were down. It was a high tense situation. Local sheriffs and local cops should have been handling this. You know, this should have been a local issue and not a federal issue. The problem is the federal government has got their fingers in through BLM, FBI, ATF, if it's drug-related, FCC, if it's air traffic or communication relations, you know, highway funds, drug funds, international. The federal government has become a crazy, huge bureaucracy that was never. State rights were supposed to run states. And the federal government, over time, like all governments, unless they're controlled and constantly watched and held in check, will grow and grow. This should have been a state issue, and the feds came in and tried their manhandling just like they did in Waco, just like they did in Ruby Ridge, just like when the Oklahoma bombing happened. The feds always want to come in and get their nose in it. And they came in the Las Vegas shooting, and states' rights have just gone away. People need to wake up and start electing people with like minds on how to protect state rights and stop federal government overreach. Here's a little background info on how this progressed.
Standoff with federal agents over grazing rights on their land. Patty Carlson on Facebook recently asked us about Eamon Bundy, who, along with his brother and father, is on trial right now in Las Vegas. National correspondent William Lajeunesse shows us what's happening.
I've tried to fight this thing legally, and I've tried to fight it politically, but we've got one more fight. We, the people, haven't fought yet.
In the spring of 2014, Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy claimed he was under attack by federal agents who wanted to seize his cattle and take his land. During the weeks-long standoff, federal agents tased Bundy's son Eamon and forced Cliven's sister to the ground.
We will not give up our land!
Hundreds of protesters answered his call. Heavily armed, they forced dozens of federal agents to stand down. More than 3 years later, in federal court, prosecutors argue Bundy tried to incite a range war. He is on trial for assault and obstruction. Along with sons Eamon and Ryan, they face life in prison.
I'm not afraid of the truth. You know, the lies bother me.
Judge Gloria Navarro, an Obama appointee, let Ryan out of jail to prepare his own defense, but refused to release 71-year-old Cliven, fearing he won't obey federal police. In court, the Bundys wear prison-issued clothing instead of street clothes.
When they're in custody, they want the world to know they're in custody.
Prosecutors understand the symbolism, but insist they only seized Bundy's cattle after the rancher violated court orders and failed to pay $1 million in back grazing fees. The family argues Washington used that issue to turn their ranch into a federal monument, which is what it is today.
This is a very simple case. It's about a man and a family who ranched the land. The family's been ranching it for 150 years. The federal government comes in, they claim a right to manage that land, and the way they're managing it would have driven him out of business.
Cliven Bundy is a folk hero to those who see federal overreach in the West, where Washington controls more than 40% of the land in 9 western states. This trial could last several months. Brett?
William, thank you. If you have a
40% of the land, federal government, that is absolutely outrageous. And people just think it's normal, and you got these idiots on the left running around going, yay, more government, yay, more socialism. Let's give everything to the government, then they could just give us free cheese. Freaking idiots. Well, so in my book, hey, it's a great day for Americans, and I'm glad. Congratulations to them. I'm sure to the left it's, some oh no, Constitution rights, the people's rights. Suddenly, all the crazy left-wing socialists who want all guns taken away and want everybody to be sheep living in ghettos in liberal-run cities, they're thinking this is a big loss. But for anybody with 2 brain cells, I say this is a great day, and I'm glad that these guys got out all these charges. They were dismissed. Remember, they dismissed all the charges on Randy in Waco or Ruby Ridge, and another loss for the government. So the government isn't unbeatable, but it takes a lot of people and time and effort and standing together, and the government's pretty good at dividing people. So, there's my take on it. Hopefully, I'm sure everyone on my channel who's a regular here will have the same sentiment that this is a good thing. We'll end that there.